And we are joined this morning by the 6th District Congressman Bob Goodlatte, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Bob.
You're a very busy man these days.
Well, I am, but it's good to be with you and your viewers this morning.
We appreciate that. All right, so on Capitol Hill, your committee is seeing a lot of people these days. Let's talk about first the IRS and what's being called the IRS scandal there, targeting the conservative groups, I guess, in last year before the elections. What are you finding out in these hearings?
Well, first of all, we're finding out that every day it seems to expand to more and more types of groups. First it was the Tea Parties, and it was Tea Parties, some other conservative groups. Then it was pro-Israel groups, pro-life groups. Almost any type of group with a conservative or libertarian slant to it seems to have been targeted by the IRS for ridiculously excessive investigation on whether or not they qualified for 501c4 status under the Internal Revenue Code. Questions like, what books do you read? Who are the members of your organization? Things like that they do not need to know in order to determine whether they qualify for tax-exempt status.
And we're talking about that because, well, first of all, everyone who files for that, they need to be scrutinized.
Absolutely.
To see. But these were specifically targeted.
It appears that, and based upon the testimony, based upon now one of the supervisors pleading the fifth when she came before the Ways and Means Committee to testify, or the actually Government Reform Committee to testify, it appears that they were specifically targeting conservative groups, and that's really raising a lot of questions. Similar questions raised, by the way, with regard to the targeting of the Fox News reporter when it came to investigating leaks and going so far as to accuse him of being a co-conspirator and actually telling the judge that the chief Washington correspondent of Fox News was a flight risk in terms of their investigation of a leak. And again, just like with the IRS, you need to investigate leaks. It's a serious thing when your national security may be jeopardized, but breaking all in terms of how they go about doing it.
All right, and in speaking of that, they also had the Associated Press, and it wasn't just a specific reporter or an editor. It was basically an entire office, several phone lines. The records were picked up.
20 reporters over a 2-month period of time. Their telephone records were requested. Now, this is just the number that you dialed, but that can tell you an awful lot about what a reporter's doing and lead you to their contacts and allow you to investigate them and so on. Now, again, when you're investigating leaks, it's appropriate to do certain things, but there are special rules you're supposed to follow because of the First Amendment, freedom of the press, and the Department of Justice has specific outlined rules within the department and in the Code of Federal Regulations. They did not notify the Associated Press that they were requesting, they were subpoenaing these records from the phone companies, something they're supposed to do, and they haven't explained to us why they did not. In addition, the Attorney General, when he testified before the committee, told us that he had recused himself and turned that over to the Deputy Attorney General. So we've sent the Deputy Attorney General a letter 2 weeks ago asking him for more information about why they handled that the way they did, why the Attorney General recused himself, and so on. With regard to the other matter, though, with regard to Fox News, that is much more serious, because in that case, the Attorney General, testifying under oath before the committee, was asked by a Democratic member of Congress, Hank Johnson of Georgia, about the targeting of reporters for prosecution, and he said that this was something he had never heard of and didn't think it was a wise idea, and yet he was involved in, at least with discussions, and we don't know all the facts here yet either, with the approval of a warrant, an affidavit for a warrant, in which they accused James Rosen, the chief Washington correspondent of Fox News, of having at least been an abettor or co-conspirator in a leak case. So that sure looks like potential prosecution there, and that's what the Attorney General was testifying about. So we wrote a letter to the Attorney General, I and Jim Sensenbrenner, the chairman of one of our subcommittees, asking the Attorney General to answer a number of specific questions, and we asked him to respond by this Wednesday.
All right. Now, people are wondering, is it time for Holder to step down?
Well, on this matter, I think we need to afford him the opportunity to respond. However, on a whole host of other matters beginning long ago, and including things like Fast and Furious, the gun running operation where the U.S. government sent thousands of guns into Mexico, which resulted in a number of deaths, including the death of one U.S. border security agent. In that case, the Attorney General refused to turn over documents requested regarding that investigation to the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, and the Congress subsequently subpoenaed the documents. He still refused, and then finally he was held in contempt of the House. And when that occurred, I signed on, along with a lot of other members, to the idea and a resolution calling for him to resign.
A lot of people, you know, just for the folks at home, they want accountability in Washington.
That's right.
When you look at the IRS deal, it's being blamed on some rogue people in Cincinnati, lower level. It had to have come from, I'm just speaking for myself. It seems to me it had to have come from higher up. You know, when you talk about the Department of Justice stuff, looking into the phone records of the entire Associated Press office in one spot and James Rosa, these aren't just individual things. Again, coming from me, just a guy who sees this stuff on the news, it seems like it would be coming from higher up.
You just said it, though. It's accountability. Because accountability leads to one of two things. Either, if it is a lower level person, they need to be held accountable. They need to lose their job or face some other discipline for making these outrageous decisions. However, when you hold somebody accountable and they say, well, hey, it wasn't me, I was acting on orders from on high, if they're being held accountable, they're far more likely to say, I was told to do that by so-and-so higher up in the administration. So accountability is what we're demanding in all of these different investigations, and we're going to pursue it until we find where the truth leads us.
All right. I know you're on a tight time schedule. Can you just give us an update on immigration, where that stands here? Sure.
Immigration is something that we are working very hard on in the Judiciary Committee. We have a broken immigration system in our country, and all aspects of it. Our legal immigration system isn't the working way it should to grow our economy and create jobs for Americans. Our enforcement of our immigration laws are very, very poor. And finally, we need to find some resolution to what the legal status will be for people who are not lawfully present in the United States. We're taking a step-by-step approach in the House. Unlike the Senate, we think the Senate is making the same mistake that was made in 1986. They're passing one large bill. They're giving legal status to millions of people before they put in place the border security and interior security in the country. Because remember, about 35% or more of the people who are unlawfully present in the United States entered legally under student visas, visitors visas, business visas, visa waivers, and then simply overstayed. So the border's not an issue there, but the interior enforcement and things like E-Verify, where when you go apply for a job, they can electronically check whether you have a valid Social Security number. All those things need to be put in place before we give that legal status, because what happened in 1986, they gave 3 million people an easy pathway to citizenship and then never put in place the enforcement measures in any serious way.
Complex issue, and I know the debate's going to rage on for the months to come. Thank you so much for joining us here. I know you're a very busy person here.
Thanks, Bob. Good to be with you.
Fantastic. Let's send it over now to Christina for a look at